Part 1 unfolds as the beginning of a quiet inheritance that feels heavier with each passing hour as the rancher arrives at the edge of a wide and forgotten valley where the land stretches out in dry grass and old fences leaning like tired men. The rancher is experienced and practical, someone who believes land speaks clearly if you know how to listen, and at first the property seems ordinary: cattle paths worn into the earth, a weather-beaten house, and a sense of isolation that promises peace. Yet from the first evening something feels restrained, as if the land is holding its breath. The only other soul nearby is an old ranch hand who stayed on when the previous owner vanished without ceremony. The man is thin and sun-hardened with eyes that never quite meet the horizon, and when he speaks it is slow and careful, as if words themselves might wander somewhere dangerous. Over a simple meal he explains the land boundaries, pointing toward a distant ravine cut deep into the earth and wrapped in a tall fence of rusted wire. He gives one rule, and it is not spoken like advice but like law: do not look down there. The rancher laughs at first, thinking it a joke or superstition common to lonely places, but the old hand does not smile. He explains no stories, no legends, no threats, only that those who look never leave the land the same. The rancher presses for reason but receives silence, and that silence lingers heavier than any explanation. Night settles and the sounds of the ranch change. Coyotes go quiet, insects still, and from far away a low vibration rises like breath from a sleeping giant. The rancher notices the cattle huddling away from the ravine fence, refusing to graze near it even when feed is placed there. In the morning he walks the perimeter and sees deep scratches in the soil near the fence, marks too large for known animals and too deliberate to be natural. The old hand watches from afar, his posture tense as if waiting for a mistake. He repeats the rule again without emotion. The rancher begins to feel irritation mixed with unease, because land should not demand obedience, it should yield to work and reason. Yet every path seems to curve away from the ravine without conscious choice, and even the wind avoids it. The explanation of Part 1 lies in this growing pressure where nothing terrible has happened yet, but everything suggests that it could. The warning is not dramatic but absolute, and that makes it frightening. The rancher senses that the rule is older than the fence, older than ownership, and perhaps older than language itself. This first part establishes the quiet threat, the idea that horror does not rush forward screaming but waits patiently behind a boundary, daring someone to cross it. The rancher believes rules exist to be tested and land to be mastered, but the land here offers a single refusal, and in that refusal the seed of everything horrifying is planted. Part 2 continues as days pass and the rancher settles into routines meant to bring order, yet the land resists him in subtle ways. Tools go missing only to reappear near the ravine fence, coated in a dark sticky film that smells faintly of iron, and rot livestock begin to vanish, not in violent bursts but quietly, as if they simply step out of existence. Hoofprints lead toward the fenced edge and stop there. No struggle, no blood, just absence. The rancher questions the old hand, who grows more withdrawn, sleeping during daylight and pacing at night, muttering to himself. The man avoids the ravine with a reverence that borders on terror, and when pressed about the missing animals he only says the land collects what it is. This answer angers the rancher, who prides himself on logic and hard work. He rides into town seeking records and explanations, but the locals' close ranks conversations halt when he enters, and names are swallowed before they are spoken. At the county office he finds entire years of documentation missing: land transfers marked finalized without signatures, incident reports stamped sealed and inaccessible. One clerk quietly advises him to stop asking and to respect the warning if he wants to keep his life intact. That word life lingers uncomfortably on the ride back. Curiosity begins to gnaw at the rancher, not simple interest but a persistent itch that grows stronger each night. He dreams of depth and pressure, of standing on the edge of something vast and listening to a rhythm beneath the ground. He wakes with dirt under his nails and no memory of leaving the house. The cattle grow restless, their eyes rolling, whites showing as they cluster farther from the ravine and refuse water drawn from the nearby well, claiming it tastes wrong. The old hand finally breaks one evening and admits there was an incident years ago when man came to dig, claiming mineral rights. They dug too deep and found something that should have stayed buried. The story fractures as he tells it, his voice shaking, words repeating, looping back on themselves. He says the ravine is not natural, that it opened after the digging and that it has been fed ever since. He will not say fed with what. The rancher feels a pull now, a responsibility twisted into fascination. If something is there, if something requires tending, then ignoring it feels like neglect, like letting a wound fester. He convinces himself that understanding is control and that fear thrives only in ignorance. Each night the sounds from the ravine grow clearer, a wet echoing churn that vibrates through the soles of his boots. When he walks near the fence he stands closer than before, telling himself he is only inspecting wire, only ensuring safety, yet his eyes trace the drop following shadows downward, imagining answers waiting below. Part 2 is the slow tightening of that temptation where mystery becomes obligation and curiosity disguises itself as duty. Part 3 begins at the moment restraint finally fails when the rancher stands alone at the ravine fence just before dawn with the sky pale and bruised in the world holding still. The old hand is gone, vanished during the night, leaving behind an empty room and a single phrase scratched into the wood of the table that reads, "It sees back." The rancher tells himself this is nonsense born of fear and exhaustion, yet his hands shake as he cuts the wire and steps closer. The ground slopes inward unnaturally smooth as if shaped by design rather than erosion, and the air grows warmer, carrying a low rhythmic sound like machinery breathing. He reaches the edge and pauses, feeling a pressure behind his eyes, an invisible insistence urging him to look. He resists for a moment, remembering the rule, remembering the cattle, the missing records, the fear in every face, yet the belief that knowledge equals control pushes harder, and he leans forward, peering down into the ravine. The sight below is not chaos but order. A vast hidden chamber carved into the earth, walls reinforced with metal and stone platforms descending in deliberate tiers, channels cut into the floor guide a slow-moving current of dark fluid toward a central structure that hums softly, pulsing like a heart. Lights flicker on without warning, illuminating symbols etched into every surface, marks that resemble instructions rather than decoration. The rancher realizes this place is maintained, not abandoned, and as that thought forms, something shifts below. One of the lights turns toward him, not a beam but an awareness, and the hum deepens, changing pitch to match his breathing. He understands then that the ravine is not a pit but a mechanism, and that mechanisms require operators. His legs weaken, his memories not his own flood his mind, images of men working willingly at first, then desperately, then not at all. He sees hands performing tasks again and again, compelled by the certainty that stopping would be worse. The structure emits a sound like satisfaction, and a section of the floor rises, forming a path upward, inviting him down. He stumbles back in horror, but the fence behind him collapses inward, sealing the exit with a clang that echoes endlessly. The land itself seems to lean closer, funneling him toward the edge. He shouts for help, but the sound is swallowed instantly, as if absorbed by the walls. The chamber below reveals more details now, doors opening and closing, tools aligning themselves, awaiting use. He notices a control panel worn smooth by countless touches, and understands with sick clarity that the warning was never about danger alone but about responsibility. Those who look are seen, and those who are seen are chosen. The rancher feels something reach into his thought, is not violent, not cruel, but absolute, informing him of what must be done to keep the land stable, to keep the surface quiet, to keep the hunger below satisfied. He realizes the previous owner did not flee out of cowardice but mercy, trying to leave the burden behind, yet burdens left unattended do not disappear, they grow restless. The path upward locks into place, and the mechanism waits patiently, confident in its claim. The rancher is still standing above it, still free in the narrowest sense, but the look has already changed him. The knowledge has nested inside his mind, rearranging priorities, dulling fear, sharpening purpose. He steps back from the edge at last, but not in relief. In his eyes there is no longer curiosity, only calculation, and the ravine below hums in approval, having been acknowledged, having found its next caretaker. You said. Part 4. ChatGPT said. Part 4 moves forward through days that blur together as the rancher lives between the surface world and the knowledge now lodged inside his thoughts. He does not speak of what he saw, yet his behavior shifts with unsettling calm. He measures the land differently, mapping paths not for cattle but for transport, weighing distances in terms of efficiency rather than beauty. The ravine no longer repels him, it waits, and he feels that waiting like a pulse beneath his ribs. Each night the hum rises through the ground, syncing with his heartbeat, and each morning he wakes knowing exactly what needs to be done. He begins by repairing the fence, not to keep people out but to mark a boundary between the ordinary and the necessary. He brings equipment down from the shed, heavy tools, generators, lights and containers. Though he cannot fully explain why he chose each one, he only knows they are required. The dreams intensify, but they are no longer chaotic, they are instructional, showing sequences, movements, corrections. He learns that the mechanism below stabilizes something older and wider than the land itself, something that presses upward when neglected, warping soil, minds and memory. The old hand returns in fragments through these dreams, not as a man but as exhaustion incarnate, hands shaking, eyes hollow, repeating the same motions until he simply could not continue. The rancher understands then that tending is not endless but consuming, each cycle taking something irretrievable from the one who performs it. He tells himself he is stronger, more disciplined, that he will manage where others failed. He frames this belief as duty to the land, to the nearby town, to the unknowing families who sleep peacefully because of what happens below. During the day he practices the motions above ground, digging channels, testing machinery, adjusting flows as if rehearsing for a performance. He notices his reflection growing unfamiliar, his eyes fixed inward, listening constantly. The cattle are gone now, either sold or Taken he cannot remember which, and the ranch grows silent, clean, stripped of distractions. The first descent happens without ceremony. He follows the rising path into the chamber carrying tools that feel perfectly weighted. The structure responds like activating platforms aligning the hum steady and approving. The work is methodical, not violent but deeply wrong, requiring precision and endurance. He realizes the horror is not in gore but in repetition, in the certainty that this must be done again and again to prevent something far worse from emerging. As he works, the mechanism feeds on more than materials. It draws on resolve, memory, resistance. Every task completed dulls another edge of his former self, yet he feels pride in this stability, readings in the smoothness of operation. When he surfaces hours later, the sun is setting exactly as the dreams predicted, and the land above feels lighter, calmer, as if grateful. This reinforces his resolve. He tells himself that sacrifice is the foundation of civilization and that someone must always stand between order and collapse. The choice he faces is no longer whether to continue but how fully he will commit, because the mechanism responds best to intention. Half measures cause fluctuations, dangerous ones. The ravine teaches him this gently. At first a warning vibration, a spike in pressure, a reminder that hesitation is costly. By the end of part 4, the rancher has accepted the role, not with madness but with conviction. He writes a new rule on a sign near the fence, words chosen carefully, not as threat but as truth. Do not look down there, not because it is dangerous but because once you see it you will understand, and understanding makes turning away impossible. Part 5 settles into a quiet finality that feels earned rather than sudden as the rancher completes the last sequence required for stability. The mechanism below hums at a lower pitch, now content balanced, sealed for the foreseeable future. Smoke rises at dawn from the ravine, not chaotic but measured, venting excess pressure into the sky where it thins and disappears. The land responds immediately. Grass thickens, water clears, insects return. The town nearby sleeps peacefully, unaware of the exchange that has taken place. The rancher moves through the morning with steady purpose, sealing access, reinforcing the fence and posting the warning sign in clear, simple words. He does not embellish because embellishment invites curiosity. He understands now that curiosity is the true danger. He removes every trace of the old hand and the former owner, not out of cruelty but necessity, because the mechanism dislikes reminders of failure. When the work is done, he stands alone, listening for the pull that once urged him to look again, but there is none. The knowledge is still there, heavy and exact, but it no longer pushes, it waits. He has become part of the system, a regulator rather than a victim. The horrifying act is not a single moment but a commitment, the choice to continue the work when stopping would be easier. Kinder to the self, he accepts that pieces of him will erode over time, that memories will thin, emotions flatten, and eventually he too will need replacement. This understanding does not frighten him, it feels correct. As weeks pass, travelers come near the property, reading the sign, feeling an inexplicable chill and turning away. The rancher watches from a distance, calm, vigilant, prepared. He keeps records, meticulous schedules, margins of tolerance, because order depends on precision. At night he listens to the land breathing evenly and knows the balance holds. For now the story ends not with screams or a collapse but with silence maintained by something unspeakable, done willingly, and somewhere beneath the soil the mechanism rests, satisfied, knowing it has been seen, tended, and obeyed, waiting patiently for the day the rancher grows tired and another pair of eyes ignores the warning and looks down there.